Why don't we do the things that we need to do in order to get the outcome or hit the goals that we want? This was a question that was asked to me by one of my YouTube subscribers. So I'm doing something different today. I'm actually going live on YouTube at the same time that I'm recording this podcast. So please bear with me if it feels a little bit discombobulated, but I'm sure it won't be. I'm sure it'll be absolutely perfect. So let's just go to that space. You know you want something different, whether it's more money in your business, whether you want that leaner body, the new job, the soulmate, the freedom, whatever it is, you know you want it. You know some of the things that you need to do to make that a reality for you, and you want it really badly, but no matter how badly you want it, you don't do the things that you need to do. How frustrating is that, and why do we do it? Why is that a pattern of behavior for us? So that's what I'm going to be discussing in this episode of Your Rich Life podcast. So if you're ready, let's dive straight in. So like I say, what we're going to do in this episode is I'm going to give you 5 reasons why we don't do the things that we do. And then I'm going to give you the exact place that I want you to start so that you can start doing the things that you need to do. Now, I've made a couple of notes here because this is such a great question and it's such a big question. I really sat and thought about this and thought, like, if there was one thing, but there isn't one thing. So even though I'm going to give you 5 things, what I want you to notice and I want you to be open to is that they're all interrelated with each other. One of them doesn't just stand out. And I'm going to give you a couple of invitations here. I'm going to give you an invitation to notice which 1, 2, or 3 of the 5 that you feel most is relevant to you. But I'm also going to ask you to say, well, how does that impact the other areas? So if you do have access to a pen and paper, I would really recommend you write some notes from this, because the more awareness you have about what I'm about to share with you now, the easier it will be for you to make the transition into starting something and to get you where you want to go. And it's going to just, this whole thing is such an exercise of self-exploration. And the reason that I feel particularly so passionate about this right now is that I've been working with a new coach and mentor now for about 8 weeks. And one of the things that he teaches us is that there is an understanding and there is a knowing. And the analogy that he always uses is that, you know, I can have an understanding of what it is to break my arm, even though, touch wood, I've never broken a limb. I know I have an understanding of what it means to break a limb, but I don't have a knowing. I haven't been there. I haven't experienced it. And one of the reasons I held off on doing this podcast episode for my subscriber and for you guys was that I knew that the work that I was going to be doing with this coach was going to put me in the knowing, and that I was fully committed to everything this coach was teaching and everything he was asking of me. And I was going to go in all guns blazing, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter, I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. I trusted this coach, and it is absolutely transformational. So now I can come to you from a place of a knowing what this work feels like, and a knowing of how it's like layers, but they're layers and they're integrated and they're blended, and sometimes it's very difficult to separate them. And so again, I just want to remind you that the invitation is just notice the patterns, notice where you feel the words in your body, and just trust your guidance that it will take you where you need to go, particularly as we get to the homework bit at the end. So if you do have a pen and paper, one of the things that I want you to write down now, which is going to be what I'm going to call your guiding star, your North Star for this podcast, is the following quote from Jim 14, which says, "You are where your attention is." You are where your attention is. And I'm hoping that as we go through the podcast, you'll develop a deep knowing of what that means. If you need clarification on it, please do just drop me a question in the comments, and I'll make sure that I come back and answer it. Because when you have a knowing, an understanding to knowing of what this statement means, literally it can be like a touch paper, whatever that saying is, to transform your life in a very short period of time. So I've discussed that these following 5 things are not separate, and I've asked you to look at your experiences and your patterns. So the number 1, I decided to start here with number 1 because this is like the big thing that encases it all. Number 1 is when you don't find yourself doing the things that you need to do to get the outcome that you're moving towards, it's because you don't have a program in your brain for that outcome. And the simplest way for me to share that, like to give a metaphor, analogy for that, is that if, like me, you have a Mac and you don't buy Microsoft Office, you can't use Word, you can't use Excel because you don't have the program on your Mac to make that work. So if your brain doesn't have a program for six-figure business owner, or like the fit and lean machine, or, you know, being in a relationship with unconditional love, or any other outcome that you've been working towards that you can't work, that you find yourself not moving towards, you know, in any tangible way, it's likely because you don't have a program for it in your brain. However, that does not mean that it's not possible. It's entirely possible. And as we go through these 5 steps, I'm going to show you exactly how it's entirely possible. But just know right now that primarily it's going to be because you don't have a program for this desired outcome in your brain. Number 2 is that it's not one of your top values, or it's antagonistic to your values. So something I'm hearing a lot right now from my clients who are generally sort of small business owners is that one of the reasons they set up in business is that they have a really like deep drive for freedom to do what they want, when they want, with whom they want, all that kind of jive. And when I talk to them about scheduling, their brain goes into a little tizzy, because in their brain, scheduling means containment. Therefore, it's antagonistic to their top value of freedom. And so they resist the scheduling. But in the resistance of the scheduling, they don't do the things that they need to do, and they don't get the results that they want to have. Another way to look at this, again, very common in small business owners, is that if you want to make more money in your business, or if you just want more abundance in your life, okay, but you don't have money, success, abundance, achievement, prosperity, or whatever in your top values, you are not going to be taking the actions towards that because you're not being driven by that value. You can say you want it, but if you were to do a value exercise like I had to do at the beginning of this program with my coach, we had about 100 odd different values. And nowhere in my top 10 was money, abundance, success, achievement. Like I had, you know, love and connection and contribution, all of which are amazing, but it wasn't guiding the actions that I needed to take to generate more income and abundance in my life and in my business. So just bear that in mind. And you can alter your values so that you can take the action that you need to take. So again, it doesn't matter if your values aren't there yet. You can play a game of Jenga and you can move them to support the outcome that you want. The third really important reason why you're not doing the things that you need to do is you have limiting stories. Now, a lot of you are going to want to call them limiting beliefs, but how much power, when you tell yourself that it's a belief, how much power does that belief have? When you tell your brain it's just a story, what does that imply? It implies immediately that a story can be changed, whereas a belief for a lot of us feels more concrete in our body. It feels more tangible, more real, and also like more constricting. So you have limiting stories. You have limiting stories about what's possible for you depending on your culture, where you grew up, what your parents said, what school you went to, what your siblings did. You have limiting stories about being a man or a woman, or what's available to you, what's possible for you. You have limiting stories about money and sexuality and achievement, all of those things. We all have limiting stories. So if you find yourself not getting the outcomes that you want and not taking the actions that you need to take, you're going to have limiting stories. And again, you can only do what you are. So if you're functioning from these limiting stories, you can only do the things that come from those stories until you know different. Number 4, this is more from the high performance coaching aspect of it. And this is all based on like scientific research. So we know this to be true. Each and every one of us, we're avoiding 3 pains in our life: the pain of loss, the pain of process, and the pain of outcome. And what that means very quickly is that if I do this thing, what might I lose? Well, the most common thing that we lose is comfort in what we're doing now. So even if we are so miserable and so peed off that we don't have what we want, your brain has a level of comfort in that certainty. So when we know we're going to lose that comfort, our brain does not like it, and it will offer you all kinds of BS to stop you from doing it. You might think you might lose relationships, you might lose freedom, you might lose autonomy. Like, what might you lose if you do this thing? Then we have process. The process pain. How uncomfortable is this going to be for me? Can I actually manage it? Do I have what it takes? And then the outcome pain, as an example, is, but what if I do all this and the outcome isn't what I thought it was going to be, or it doesn't work, or it all goes wrong? Okay, so that's outcome pain. And then we've all got these 4 fears: the fear of rejection, ridicule, ruin, and regret. So you put those in the basket that you're carrying around every day. You're like, well, I've got these pains over here that I'm trying to avoid, and these fears over here that I don't want to face. Holy crap, much better that I stay in my little zone of comfort. But we're all functioning from those. And again, we can change our brain to think differently about these things. And finally, and ultimately, it comes down to commitment. You don't have commitment to the things that you need to do because you're already too committed to other stories, to other beliefs, to other outcomes for whatever reason. You don't even need to know why, but just trust me. So I'll give you an example in a second, right? So you're committed to stories that don't line up with what you desire. And that's where we're going to go with the homework today. So before we go into the homework, just a couple of little notes. All of this being said, these 5 things. So let me just recap the 5 things for you. The 5 things are: you don't have the program, it's not in your top value, or it's antagonistic with that. You have limiting stories, you're avoiding pain and fear, and you're committed to stories that don't serve you, okay? None of this means that you're not capable. None of this means that you are broken. And none of this means that it's not possible, because I'm telling you now, hand on heart, that it is 100% entirely possible when you understand how your brain has been programmed, that you have everything inside of you now to transform your life in 6 months or less. That's what I truly believe. And that all of this work, the work that's going to make that change for you, is an inside job. There is nothing external to you that is going to change all this stuff going on inside. It's an inside job. So where do I want you to start? Where am I going to encourage you to start? The easiest and most effective place for you to start is with commitment. Because if you look at those 5 things, what it comes down to ultimately is that we're not taking consistent action toward the goal that we want to do, regardless of why, regardless of which one of those 5 things is, the 5 things is causing you most dissonance. It's still ultimately that we're not taking the action. So my invitation to you is that you want to teach yourself to have the identity of somebody who is committed to the things that matter. You are committed. You're just somebody who is committed. That is an identity you have. I'm a committed person. When I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I will not break the promises to myself anymore. I'm going to do that. And so we have to learn that behavior, because at the moment, your program tells you you're committed to something that doesn't serve you. And I've got a couple of examples for you. So the question that I want you to consider now, and I'm going to say it slowly, and I want you to close your eyes while you listen to it, and I want you to drop from your head into your heart and listen carefully and notice the first answer that comes up for you. Is it more important for you to stay committed to the stories and behaviors that keep you unhappy, unfulfilled, and frustrated? Or is it more important to commit to the stories and behaviors that guarantee you get the results you want? Just notice where your brain takes you with that one, okay? So just a couple of little notes. Consistency trumps intensity at the start. So please ignore your brain when it offers you that you have to do all the things. I don't want you doing 20 things. I don't want you doing all the hard things. We're going to just stick to some simple things, because consistency is how you create that identity of commitment, not the intensity to start with, because most people will do that, burn out, and it re-identifies themselves as somebody who doesn't commit, somebody who doesn't play the long game, somebody who lets themselves down. And that kind of identity isn't going to get you the outcome and the results that you want. And we're thinking about now creating this story that I am committed. I am committed to the things that create growth and results, period. That's it. That's the identity that we're going for. So just a couple of things to kind of get your brain to go on the other side of the fence. You can see where you are committed in terms of your stories. I want you to think about some of the goals that you've set in the past, goals that you've been working towards for what might feel like forever, and you don't seem to achieve them. And I want you to notice what you do instead. So when you decide not to go to the gym and you skip the gym again, what do you do instead? When you don't do that live for your audience, or you don't put your content out for your community, what do you choose to do instead? When you don't schedule your business activities, when you don't eat well, when you don't make the choices, I want you to get really honest with, what do I do instead? Because this is showing you the story that you're committed to. So maybe you're committed more to the stories of being judged than you are committed to serving your audience. Maybe you're more committed to the sofa and eating crisps than you are to honoring your body and loving your body because of the strength and the fluidity and the mobility that it provides you. Maybe you're more committed to seeing the worst in your partner. So you just, instead of like saying, I'm going to honor my partner and I'm going to have a good conversation with them, maybe you just nag them all the time. Maybe you're committed to the story that you don't have time. And yet, if you look, you'll notice that you spend a lot of time scrolling on social media or watching Netflix or just sleeping or whatever. Like you already have the identity of being committed, but you're committed to things that are not serving you, period. And this has been one of the most eye-opening and most difficult experiences for me to have the knowing of over this last 8 weeks, for me to say, where have I been committed? Because there are some areas of my life where I don't have the results that I want. Now, my personal journey right now is a huge journey of letting go and rewriting the story that everything has to be hard, that I have to work harder than everybody else, that we have to work hard to be successful. And when you've been in that alpha female and very masculine energy for a long time, which is what being a business owner created for me, it became something that it became this year something that I couldn't ignore anymore, which is why I'm working with this coach. And it's just, like I said, it's been transformational. So very, very simply, what is your homework? For the next 7 days, I want you to commit to one thing. Now, it doesn't have to be related to a goal, although it does help. So if your goal is something to do with your business or something to do with your health, then you can set up a very simple action that you can commit to every day for 7 days. It makes sense, doesn't it, to commit to that? But if that feels too scary and it sets off your brain alarm bells, don't do it. Just do something that you're going to commit to that's different to what you're doing now. Like, hit those 5,000 steps, take a cold shower, do a 5-minute meditation, text somebody every day and tell them that you love them, do a workout, like whatever it is. If just on the workout thing, like if you're getting into consistency and commitment, like work out for 5 minutes, 5 times a day. Don't go in and go, I've got to do 30 minutes and I've got to do that 7 times a day. We want to create the commitment to consistency. Ignore the brain fog that's telling you must do more. No, let's keep it simple. Then after 7 days, you can increase intensity. You can add something else on. Follow your guidance, but ultimately remember this. You are creating an identity of somebody who commits to things that matter, that make the biggest difference in their life, and that is it. Now, I hope you have found this podcast helpful. I can tell you now, hand on heart, my life has changed more in 8 weeks since doing this work than it has done in the last 5 years. And I never thought I would experience the emotions and the serenity. Look at my jumper, if you can see me. Not okay. Right, I never thought I'd experience that. But it was the commitment to doing the inner work, no matter what my brain was offering me, that has allowed me to find this space within myself and for myself that is truly transforming how I show up in my life, my relationships, and my business. And I want that same thing for you. So if you love this episode, you know what to do. Please do give me a like, comment, share, subscribe. And if you are ready to take on a coach and find out how this work can transform your life in 6 months or less, please do make sure you hit the link below and book in your free connection call right now. And I'll speak to you again in the next episode of the Your Rich Life podcast.